Steve Gonzer, physical therapist and founder of RunSmart Online, and we're going to be talking about awful exercise that a lot of people get, and when people come to me in the clinic, I can usually guess what they're doing. A lot of it's open chain, meaning the foot's off the ground, and it's not specific to the activity. So this theory of specificity just means that whatever you do and you want to get better at, you should really just practice that, because your body can adapt and become more efficient at that activity. The same thing is said for our exercise, and that's really just kind of the runner-specific thing we talk about, or just functional exercise needs to mimic the sport, okay? So you want to use your muscles the way that you use them when you're in sport, and you can't just, mix and match things. So let's cover my most hated exercise, which is a clamshell in the sideline hip abduction. I'll show you a little bit of why I hate it, and I'll show you the exercise, and then in the next article I'll talk to you about my favorite fix and substitute for that exercise. So take a look at how our body functions when we run. So the biggest thing to look at is what happens when we run, what happens when we function. So the easiest thing to do is just start right here. Look at how the foot's on the ground, okay? So this is like the perfect posture to look at, and we see how the knee's bent, the hip is flexed here, the knee's bent, and the foot is on the ground. This is the specific part of the exercise that we want to focus on. This does not look anything like a clamshell exercise that I'm going to cover. It looks a lot of our base 6 program. If you've done that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But the foot's on the ground and we're in this kind of figure 4 position. This is where our exercise should focus, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute. But we look at just the running motion, and really the hip is in the foot. When the foot's on the ground, the pelvis moves on the hip. And the hip is fixed, the foot is fixed. We don't have what's called open chain, and that's when the foot's off the ground. So really the majority of the load happens here. As this runner hits the ground, you're going to see that he loads, and his hip is pretty stationary. And look right through here. You see how the pelvis moves, and his hip doesn't move? His pelvis is moving on his hip and not vice versa. This is closed chain. The hip is fixed, the foot's on the ground, and the pelvis is moving on the hip. So the acetabulum is moving on the head of the femur. This is how our exercise should look. It should mimic this motion where the pelvis is moving on a fixed hip, and this is why the clamshell is just a god-awful exercise. It was done in the 80s and 90s. It's time to get over it, and it's time to start ignoring some of the articles that suggest this is a great exercise for you. Sure, it turns the hip on, but it doesn't turn it on in a specific way that translates into running by any means. So let's take a look at that clamshell exercise. I'll show you exactly what the difference between open chain and closed chain is. So somewhere down the line, this exercise has been passed down. It's something that my mom does when she watches soap operas. She does one of these and one of these. And just ask yourself, does this look, smell, feel like running? No, it really doesn't. So this is open chain, all right? So our foot's off the ground. We're moving our femur on our pelvis. When we just watched the video, when we run, our pelvis moves on our femur, if anything, and our foot's fixed on the ground. This, sure, it fires your hip abductors. So we have the clamshell, which is pretty famous, and the sideline hip abduction, which are given out a lot as far as the articles that are written and in the clinic of people who are trying to get their hips stronger, but it's really garbage. We're selectively firing your glute med in a way that we don't use it when we run, and we're also missing the boat on trying to get our quad stronger, our balance better, capturing and centering our hip. So really, this stuff just can't happen unless it's a rare circumstance. I've given this to people in the past, but in general, most people do not deserve this horrible treatment. So we want to get away from this open chain, selectively firing our glute. It doesn't look like running. We're using our muscles the wrong way. We want to start using our muscles in a better way that mimics the running motion a little bit better. So let me show you my favorite fix for this so you guys can start working on a better way to get stronger and a more functional way to get stronger. So when I talked about the running piece, and we watched that skeleton run through, and we were looking at the way we function, remember, this is the posture that we were kind of highlighting, this bent knee, loaded hip kind of presentation, and then we want to capture our balance from here, which is way different than doing the clamshell and the side hip abduction. So what we want to do is we want to take that running posture, which is here, and it's almost like a figure 4 position. We want to try to balance in and around the hip from that position. So this is my favorite exercise to do to supplement that, or to actually replace it altogether. So it's something it's worth trying. What I like to do is I like to use a piece of TheraBand and tubing that we use in the clinic. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to cheat a little bit to try to get us to fire the right way. So when we run, we hit on the outside board of our foot and we spin into the ground. Most people have a lot of trouble controlling that spin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually emphasize the spin and get you to try to control it. So this is my favorite exercise to do outside of, or to replace the clam, because I absolutely hate it. So put a piece of tubing on right around the knee, and you want to make it taut. Really what you're looking for is for the tubing to actually go on the other foot, and we want the tubing to actually try to pull us inwards. So that pull of the tubing inwards is going to try to emphasize you running and driving your knee down. So we're going to really work on control with this. So with the tubing pulling in, I'm going to balance, not let myself spin in, and then we're just going to do a simple backwards reach where you're just going to reach, touch your toe behind you, and come back up to that figure 4 position. Way more functional. We're loaded in the hip, we're working on balance, we're emphasizing the drive in from the tubing, and we're really looking like we're running rather than doing, that awful exercise. So balance, stabilize, work on the hip control, and then you're just going to reach back, touch the toe, and come back up. Now when you try this at home, what's going to happen is you're going to feel like that happened and your leg just got thrown inwards. You have to control that. Your knee doesn't have any muscles that control this, but this is how the knee wears out. All that control comes from the hip. So don't let your knee cave in. 20 times, 3 sets of 10, however you want to do it, but this would be your corrective exercise to supplement, or to actually not supplement, to just get rid of the clams altogether. So try it at home, get a piece of tubing, they're real cheap, go on Amazon, grab a piece, and again, your knee's trying to get pulled inwards. Don't do it around the other leg and try to pull it out. We're trying to emphasize the drive in, we're controlling with the hip.
Are you looking to become a stronger, faster, and more well-rounded runner? Then jump on over to RunSmartOnline.com and take our 10-day free challenge. Try our run-specific, time-saving, and easy-access videos that let you get stronger from anywhere, whether it be at work, home, or on the road.